And also it can make people more susceptible to infection. So again, not everybody's interested in weight loss. Some people are coming because they're worried about cancer. Some people have got autoimmune diseases. Some people just want to get rid of depression. So there's all different reasons of why we want to have an optimal body clock. Hello and welcome, I'm Sarah, and today I'm doing a little presentation for you about quantum biology and energy and misconceptions people have about calories and food and stuff like that. So it's explaining energy in a more of a quantum biology context. I'm also going to touch a little bit on leptin and how that works and how that relates to appetite and our desire for food or food electrons. So this was part of a presentation for my friend Sarah Kleiner's private Facebook group. So I've tried not to make it too complicated and too over the top. So it's more for sort of the lay person, but it's also sort of a practical introduction into quantum biology and how you can apply it to your daily life. And if you're interested in joining Sarah's group, the link's in the description. Also, Sarah Kleiner and I are starting a new very special quantum biology group geared for people who feel judged in other groups online, especially people who are bigger, and we've got a lot to offer there. And I've mentioned some supplements in this video, including ones that kind of have blown up mitochondria. So if you're interested in those, the links are in the description. I'm also doing a 5K lake swim to raise money for veterans, and I only had 3 weeks to train and I haven't really swum for 30 years, so that's why I'm kind of wearing my kaniki swimsuit. So a kaniki is something that light can go through, and if you want to sponsor me, the link's in the description. So let's dive in. When we talk about diet, we actually really need to consider everything that we take in on a daily basis. So from the quantum point of view, we've got to look at the hot and cold, the light, the information that you digest, the thoughts you generate, the water you drink and make, planet Earth's energy, and food, as you can see, is just in the list. It's not the most important thing. So this is where the quantum idea comes into quantum eating. So this then leads into what are we and how do we work? So we're basically made of atoms, so we're made of particles, so that will be protons, neutrons, electrons, neutrinos and more, and also we're a wave, and light's a particle and a wave as well, so that's why light affects us so much. And our brains are incredibly clever, so they obviously are able to make us, you know, have a reality, have life, have substance and stuff like that. But fundamentally, we're made of particles, so we're bits of information traveling around, and so is our food, and so is everything that we interact with. But we're also 99% water, atom for atom, so obviously that's going to be important as well. Then we need air, or we need oxygen. So the reason I've put this in here is that sometimes people get massively stuck with their health, and then I find out they live at really high altitude, and the higher up you are, the less oxygen there is. And again, not that I like telling people to move, but sometimes that has to be the solution. So we're not going to talk about oxygen in this presentation, but it's just a little thing that I came across over the weekend doing something with someone with Alzheimer's, that the Alzheimer's went crazy because they moved 7,000 feet away from sea level. So they're back now at sea level. So all of these things other than food affect us. And then also we're powered by electricity. So that's a flow of current or electrons. So we need to collect electrons. So where can we get these electrons from? So with food, that's only 30% of them. And this is why, as much as, you know if we eat too much, then bad things happen. There's a lot more to this that we can't sort of get our heads around sometimes. So where do the rest of these electrons come from? And this is like, how are we going to make them? So the easy water is the exclusion zone water. So this is the gel-like water in our body. So it's sort of like a liquid crystal, and it's got a negative charge, and it's really important for how our cells have a charge. So if our charge goes down, it's like our battery goes flat. So first of all, this water helps with our cells to let them be charged up enough, but also from a physics level, it's a reservoir and a semiconductor of electrons, and it can also separate out into protons and electrons. So now we've got positive ions, which would be protons, and then we've got electrons that are negative, and this means we can have a current that flows. And like I said before, we're electric beings, so if we've got plenty of exclusion zone water, we're more likely to have a better battery. And basically this battery is all the way through our body. So it doesn't only power us, it can also provide information and the way that the water system in the body communicates, because again, remember, it's electrically charged now because the EZ, the exclusion zone, the water's sort of separated itself out. This can actually be quicker than the nervous system, because the nervous system can actually be pretty slow because it's got to release chemicals in the synapse, and there's like all these different things it has to do. So there's got to be something quicker than the nervous system in the body. So this idea of having water as energy, not only to power us, but also so we can respond, is one reason why water is really important. And you can read more about it from Dr. Pollock. So I've put the link here. So where else can we get energy or electrons from? So with melanin, we can get the melanin from the outside. That'll be our normal melanin, and basically melanin just absorbs everything. It's like a black diamond. Like diamonds reflect everything, and melanin absorbs everything, including EMFs and X-rays and all sorts of things. So the clever thing about melanin is it can split water. So now we've got molecular hydrogen, which is a really good antioxidant. And we've also got molecular oxygen, and both of these can move electrons and protons around. So the melanin can cause water in our body to now become a source of energy. So this is why we go on and on about the sun all the time. And remember, the neuromelanin is the inside melanin, and that's why I go on and on about cold therapy, because that's how we can make UV light inside, and we can help build neuromelanin, and the cold is going to help do that. But also people will suck melanin out of their skin into their body and use it in their brains, use it to split water. But then we've got grounding. So this is just a magnetic effect. So we can stand on the earth and suck electrons in through our fingers, our feet, our pets, our plants. And this is a magnetic effect, but just bear in mind that Earth has been losing its magnetic field ever since it's existed. So there's just a bit less electrons available on the Earth than there used to be, but that doesn't mean it's, all game over. And as I mentioned oxygen before, we've actually got about 10% less oxygen than we did millions of years ago. So we do have a little bit of an energy sort of crisis going on at the moment. Then we can use red light, because this makes the ATPase spin faster. So this is just something in the mitochondria, and then this is going to make ATP. So this is a sort of chemical energy that we have. And scientists used to think ATP was the energy currency of everything, but then Gilbert Ling showed that it's not powerful enough to power everything, that the water and the melanin and all of this other structure in our body, the electrons, not just the ATP, is really important for energy. However, most people that use red light know they feel kind of good and invigorated after, so it helps their mitochondria push out a little bit more ATP, because we basically want to get as much energy as possible from everything. Oh, and also the ATP moves nitric oxide out of the electron transport chain, which we'll come back to in a moment. Then the other thing that most people know is that we're a solar panel, really, so we can absorb energy from the sun. And whether people believe in breatharians or not, I do actually know some, and I do actually think that they don't eat genuinely, but they pretty much live outside, and they're grounded and they're tanned, and they do Pilates and somatics and yoga, because also if we move our fascia about, we can produce electrons and piezoelectrics, and we can also produce more structured water. So most people know when it comes to fidgeting, when people, not that we're going to talk about calories too much, but some people just need a lot of food because all they ever do is move about. So they're just fidgeting away non-stop. So they're using their electrons, but also they're creating more electrons and more structured water themselves. So again, you don't have to fidget, but just any kind of movement is really, really helpful. It doesn't have to be exercise, because it's from the level of the fascia, you can sort of make your own energy. So basically, you just need to remember that inside you also make something called deuterium depleted water. So that's water without big hydrogens in it, because big hydrogens, deuterium, can break the ATPase in the mitochondria. And also, when the bigger something is, the less energy it has. So we're going to get to that at the end of the presentation. And we also make UV light, we also make infrared, and we make ATP, and we make other things as well. So how do we do that? So basically in our mitochondria, that they're a mini factory, and most people just think that the food goes in, and they're correct there, that fat, glucose, amino acids and ketones and alcohol and other things can go in, and then it makes something called acetyl-CoA that's just a molecule. And when we've got loads of acetyl-CoA, that's a seesaw point to store body fat, and we don't have very much. That's a seesaw point in the body to burn body fat. But then our mitochondria also make exclusion zone water, but it's deuterium depleted, so it's perfect water. And we also make infrared, so that means we basically structure our water as we make it. And also we make carbon dioxide, and we make light, and we make hormones as well in the mitochondria. So these mitochondria are like a mini factory, and they're really important for metabolism, because the hormones that the mitochondria make, it's called pregnenolone, and that then goes off and makes your sex hormones. And if we don't have enough sex hormones, that can cause trouble for people as well. And then the reason I've mentioned carbon dioxide here is that it gets really neglected, and some people have got problems with their metabolism because they've got an issue where their body thinks they're oxygen starved, and the test for this is the Bolt test. So if you can't walk very far and hold your breath, then you've got an issue with having a problem with your oxygen and carbon dioxide balance. And this is why people do things like mouth taping, or you can do things like holding your breath and walking for 20 steps. So basically a person should be able to push all their air out, hold their breath and go over 20 seconds. And I've measured quite a lot of people, and even unexpectedly, like fit looking people gasp for air after 10. So that's just a little sort of other tip about energy, that if there's something really wonky about your carbon dioxide and oxygen, that's going to affect your levels of energy. And then, as we know, if the brain thinks we don't have enough energy, then it starts asking for more food and more food electrons. So that's where this is going. And then another thing that bothers people quite a lot is this thing about carbs and fat and glucose. So just quickly, when we eat fat, it first of all provides more electrons. So it just means more water and hormones and heat and energy and light are going to come out the other end. And when it comes to making water, it's about 100, say, units for fat. It's about 77 or 75 for protein, and it's about 50 for glucose. So basically, if you want to make more exclusion zone water, or your own water, which is the ultimate hydration and what sort of lubricates and fuels you, and it sort of provides sort of energy in your battery, that's why fat is going to be better. But it's one of these things, every now and again, we do need to put glucose down the electron transport chain. Even though in the long run fat and protein are better, we do need to sort of change things or reset things every now and again. But on the other hand, people are all, you know, we're all different. I've got a friend that's been in ketosis for probably 30 years and she's fine, but then I don't know how she'd feel if she came out of it. So, you know, she might feel 20 times better just to have a break. We don't know. So then this leads into another question. Okay, so those are all the quantum things, but what else can I do for energy boost? So one thing is something called D-ribose, and this doesn't work if your mitochondria are rubbish. So that's quite a good test, because people ask me all the time, how do I know if my mitochondria are rubbish? Well, if you took D-ribose and nothing happened, then they probably are, because if you take D-ribose and your mitochondria are happy, you're going to get a boost. Then we've got something called C60. So this delivers extra electrons to the mitochondria, and also it's anti-inflammatory. So we have less swollen mitochondria, which we'll come to in a minute, of why being swollen, whether you're a mitochondria or a person, is a problem. Then we've got methylene blue, because this can help carry electrons down the electron transport chain. And this just means that more water and more energy should come out the other end. However, with anything to do with biochemistry, if you overdo it and push your mitochondria too much, they're like a machine, or you know, like putting rocket fuel in your lawnmower. They can actually pop and blow up. So you don't die or anything, because they grow back in a week. It's just, I have warned people, because some people are all or nothing. They just want everything and they want it now. And I've done this as well, because I'm like that. The first time I fiddled about with C60 or lipofullerenes, I was doing all sorts of other things. And then I suddenly got really tired and I thought, well, why am I like this? I'm doing all this quantum stuff and I feel worse. But the thing about it is they'll grow back. But the point is, it's just about, if you try and cheat with biochemistry. Okay, so I've been talking about this electron transport chain all the time. So basically, it's just something in the membrane in the mitochondria, and it's like an obstacle course. And the electrons that come from the food, or they go down the electron transport chain, and different things happen at different points. And when they get to the end, we get water and ATP out. So I said it was like an obstacle course, because electrons are a bit like people. They're really lazy. So if there's something in the way that's going to make them not want to go down the electron transport chain, then they're going to sort of wander off into the membrane somewhere, like when people have a race and they kind of can't be bothered to carry on, so they just wander off because the obstacle course was too hard. So what would happen then is, when the electrons start to escape into the membrane, the mitochondria starts to swell up a bit. So when I said earlier that when something gets bigger, it produces less energy. So basically, swollen mitochondria, that's a really big thing of inflammation. So if the mitochondria are swollen and inflamed, they're not going to work properly. So this is where metabolic problems start to come in. So people can't use energy properly, so it gets wasted and it leaks, and people start to have pain or low energy. So when we do cold therapy, what happens is, it's not just us that gets cold. Our mitochondria gets compressed or contracted. So what happens now is, everything in the electron transport chain, or the obstacle course, gets all squashed in a bit closer. So it's much easier for the electrons to go down the electron transport chain. So obviously, it's like people in an obstacle course or in a race. If the race is shorter, people are much more likely to finish because it's easier. So this is why cold therapy is so powerful. It's not just to do with making us feel good or making oxytocin. It can actually make the electron transport chain and our energy production better. And also, when it comes to this cooling down effect, the mitochondria now have to make more heat. And they have to make more infrared light. So we can make more structured water now, because we've made our own infrared light. And also, everybody knows that if you cool something down, you need to put energy in to heat it back up again. So this is why some people use cold therapy for weight loss, because they can't exercise because they're in too much pain, or they're too big and it's too dangerous, or they don't want to, or it doesn't work, or they've got leptin resistance and then supposed to be resting. So that's why I'm a big fan of cold therapy, because it's got lots of value, and there's so many different ways from a quantum level that it can be really helpful. So as I was saying before, when things lose energy, they start to get bigger. So even if we were just talking about a mitochondria, so we're talking about the mitochondria, and the electrons got lost in the membrane, and then it made it swell and it stopped working properly. But with a heart that's got cardiomyopathy, it's kind of got really swollen, and the muscles are really stretched, and it's not very good at doing its job. So the heart isn't a pump, but it still has to do something. So it vortexes the blood. So if it's really swollen, full of and inflamed, it just can't do its job properly. So it doesn't output enough sort of its work, which would be vortexing the blood. But then in terms of what we're talking about today, it can also be a person with obesity, or just a person who's thinks, well, I do everything right, but I can't lose weight. So basically, if we are leaking our electrons out all day, we're going to get inflamed and we're going to get bigger just by these laws here. So this is something that it takes people ages to get their heads around, especially if you've never heard any of this before, and you're coming from a calories in versus calories out world. And this is why when it comes to people asking about food and calories and things, I sometimes don't really answer properly, because you need to sort of know about the physics of it. And this is why the leptin reset and the circadian stuff is so important. So basically, if we have a quick summary here, so when it comes to inflammation and sometimes weight issues, it can be electrons leaking out of the body, and because we're losing energy or charge, we get bigger to try and compensate, like the cardiomyopathy heart or the swollen mitochondria. And basically, we are actually an electron hoover as well. So we can get these electrons back from all these other places I was telling you about. So the melanin, the water, the sun, and stuff like that. So that's the problem, that some people are really good at doing quantum. So they're gathering electrons really well, like a hoover, but somewhere in their system, there's a leak. So they're escaping out. And some people weren't leaking electrons in the first place, so they come and do quantum, and obviously it works amazingly, so their life changes overnight, because it's like that they have this whole new sort of revelation. And then some people manage to block up their leaks a bit. They're not very good with the quantum, but they still manage to get a result, because people get really angry that, well, I'm doing everything right and it's not working, and my friend lost 50 pounds, it's not fair. And the thing about all of this is it's really hard to measure how we're leaking electrons and losing them, but there's certain things that we know steal them. So first of all, EMFs are going to steal electrons because they steal our water. So they also annoy the mitochondria and disturb how calcium flows in the body. Then alcohol steals electrons as well. And certain people can steal electrons too, unfortunately. So you might have a husband or a partner that needs electrons, and they steal them all from you. So it sounds really stupid, but that's why some people just love going around hugging everybody, because I've got a feeling they're kind of stealing people's electrons. Not that it's a bad thing, I just don't know the answer of how to stop all of that from happening. So we can go on forever with this, but basically the point of all of this is, how does this relate into leptin then, and why do we have this leptin reset? So basically leptin is the thing that tells your brain how much electrons you've got in your body, or how much charge. So if leptin is broken, what happens is your body thinks, oh, we don't have enough electrons and we need to eat more food to get them, because it knows how to do that. So basically the quite simple message that leptin sends to your brain is either keep eating and store fat, or stop eating and burn it. Because the problem with our brains are, we're wired for survival, not looking sexy or performance. So if in doubt, like say if the leptin couldn't signal to the brain's just going to think, okay, we haven't got enough energy then, so I must store it. So it's like, I sometimes say it's like an accountant and a CEO. The accountant's meant to tell the CEO every evening, or you can spend this much money tomorrow on Facebook ads, or you can't spend any money because we're nearly broke. So that's what leptin does. And most people, even people that don't know anything about quantum, know they shouldn't really be eating late at night. So it's not that, it's also because it disturbs how leptin docks, and insulin also interferes with the leptin. So say if I have a person that's doing the leptin reset and they're really overwhelmed and they can't do any of it yet, I would just say the one thing you can do is stop eating after sunset. Even if they are eating 6 meals a day and they're on the standard American and they're waking up and looking at their phone, if you can do that bit, that's probably one of the most important ones, is don't annoy the leptin in the evening. And it's never, ever, ever going to be as simple as that. Although obviously you're always going to get those people that stopped eating in the evening, or stopped eating at 6 p.m. or 4 p.m. and everything worked for them. Because there's more to it than that. Because like I just said, most people think that leptin is something that makes them thin or fat, but it does loads more, because it works with the immune system. It can make you have high blood pressure or not. It can control insulin resistance. It controls the thyroid. It controls the heart. It controls periods, and it regulates bone mass. So it's kind of a lot more complicated than we think. But all of these things tend to relate around energy. So if we don't have enough energy, or your brain thinks it doesn't, it's not going to let you reproduce. Because I know people who are kind of quite obese, but their leptin is broken. So according to their body, they think they're starving, even though they've got plenty of body fat. The brain can't see it, so they can't get pregnant, even though you think they'd be really nice and fertile. And then when it comes to diabetes, lots of people go keto and they don't know anything about light. So every time they eat sugar, their diabetes nearly flares back up again, and they can only control it by food. And then I know lots of people who've got osteoporosis for a variety of reasons, but they've got leptin issues as well, because if people are too thin, they can have leptin that's really, really low. So they have a problem as well. And leptin is found in the fat cells under the skin. And the thing about that is that the light can get into the skin, and different color light goes in different depths. So the ultraviolet pretty much bounces off us. So the way ultraviolet works, it bounces on the skin like throwing a ball at a wall, but it doesn't. The ball can't go through the wall, but the wall noticed the ball hit it. And then the blue light, the green light, the yellow, the orange, and the infrared and the red can all go through the skin and right into the tissue, sometimes even 6 centimeters. So basically light is going to talk to the leptin. And then to back up all of this, the most important thing for processing and registering light are our eyes. And obviously this is great if you don't wear glasses or contacts or have had a cataract operation, but not to go really stressed if you have got that, because remember, you've got loads of skin that can talk to the light as well. That's why I always go on about naked and sunbathing. It's not a Jack Cruz thing. It's just sometimes when you're really limited with how much sunlight you've got in your country, you have to take more drastic actions. So basically, we want the eyes and the skin to always be able to have the same amount of light coming in, so it can report to the brain. So this is where we talk about an eye to skin mismatch. So somebody might not wear glasses, but they cover up in scarves and hats and coats all day, so the skin isn't giving the message properly, whereas another person might have contact lenses and wear a bikini all day, and they're going to have a mismatch as well, because the eyes can't get the light. So ideally we want to get as much of a skin and eye match as possible. So that's why I'm wearing like blue blockers and clothes in the summer on the computer, because I've got iris on, but I just don't really trust the computer, an iris for 100%. So I don't want blue light in my eyes, and I don't want it on my skin. So I kind of cover up both things when I'm inside, and I'll obviously take all of that off when I go outside. And the light is the primary driver of our metabolism. So this is why it's really important to get the circadian part of the leptin reset right first, because some people have never done a ketogenic diet before. So when we go through the leptin protocol, if people want to do that next, they get in a massive panic about the fact it's keto and only 50 grams of carbs. But like I've said, if you just ate 3 meals a day and did your circadian really well, that's a massive improvement in helping your leptin, helping your circadian rhythm. And you never know, that might work for you. So why is this so important about this timing? Because basically we've got all these different clocks in our body, like different organ clocks, cell clocks, and there's thousands of them. And it's like a big airport, and everything has to be organized. And if something goes wrong, it messes up something else. So it's not just about getting up in the morning and going to bed. It's like we need to know, when do we need to make hormones? When do we make neurotransmitters? When are we supposed to burn fat? When are we supposed to store it? When are we supposed to sleep? When are we supposed to be really alert? When are we supposed to heal? When are we supposed to detox? And basically all of our healing processes kind of happen at night. So we do our healing in the dark, but we do need to know, or all the cells need to know all the time, or what time is it? Because what am I supposed to do? Because the cells do totally different things in the morning versus the evening. That's why eating late at night is terrible, because the intestines want to go to bed at about 6 o'clock sometimes, or earlier. And then there are certain times in the day where we know it's much better to do a driving test or compete in sport. So all of these things have a special particular time they want to do something, so they have to know what time it is. And like I said before, if the brain gets confused or doesn't know what's going on, it's going to automatically assume the worst and do things like causing anxiety, storing body fat because it's feeling threatened. Like if I was a brain, I had no idea what time it was, I'd be kind of stressed out all the time. And then that's why people get mood improvements and metabolism improvements, because the less things your brain has got to stress about, the more likely it is it's going to let go of body fat. Because according to your brain, fat is amazing because it's full of stem cells, it's like water stored in there. So even though we're not camels, we can still make water out of our fat. It can make hormones, so our brain doesn't like giving it up unless it feels sort of safe to do so or it's appropriate. So that's why even if we don't like the fat, according to our body, it's like gold. So that's why it gets reluctant to give things up. And without going into detail, there are lots and lots of studies on circadian rhythm and different diseases. So we know full well it's implemented in obesity, it's massive in diabetes, it's also controls pain. Then we've got lots to do with circadian biology and cancer, and also it can make people more susceptible to infections. So again, not everybody's interested in weight loss. Some people are coming because they're worried about cancer, some people have got autoimmune diseases, some people just want to get rid of depression. So there's all different reasons of why we want to have an optimal body clock, and how, if we get it right, just things seem to flow better in the body.